He was two-thirds god, the strongest king who ever lived. So why is he on his knees in the dirt, shaking a dead man by the shoulders, begging him to wake up? Because the gods had just taught him the one thing a king can't command: how to lose. Forgotten Pantheon, the myths the world was never taught. 5,000 years ago, in a city of mud brick and burning sun, there was a king the gods had built too well. His name was Gilgamesh, king of Uruk. Two-thirds god, one-third man, and every part of him knew it. He raised walls around his city so high and so wide that men walked in from the desert just to stand in their shadow. He was beautiful, he was perfect, he was bored. And a man with no equal does not grow kind, he grows cruel. He worked the young men of Uruk until their hands bled on his walls. And on the night a girl was to be wed, he took her first, every time, before her own husband could. No one could stop him. Who fights a god? So the people of Uruk did the only thing left to them. They looked up and they prayed. Not for mercy, for someone who could make him stop. And in heaven, the mother goddess Ru heard them. She washed her hands and took up a pinch of clay, the same clay she had used to shape the first men. She pinched it off, she spat on it. She threw it down into the wild country, far from any city. And where it landed, something stood up that had never drawn breath before. His equal, his opposite. The only creature alive strong enough to break the king, or to save him. They called him Enkidu. He woke among the gazelles with the dirt of creation still on his skin. Hair down to his waist, no name for the stars, no word for what comes after today. He ran with the herds, he drank where they drank, he tore the traps out of the ground and set the animals free. A hunter found him out there and went white with fear. You cannot fight a thing like that. So the hunters did what frightened men do. They sent a woman. Her name was Shamhat, a priestess from the Temple of Love. They led her to the watering hole and told her one thing: make him human. For 6 days and 7 nights, Enkidu stayed with her. And when he finally stood up, the gazelles bolted from him. They knew before he did, he wasn't one of them anymore. His legs were slower now, but something behind his eyes had woken up. She put a robe on him. She gave him bread, and he didn't know what it was. She gave him beer, and he drank 7 cups and started to sing. She washed the wild off his body, and then she told him about a king. A king who took brides on their wedding night, a king no one could stop. And something in Enkidu, something brand new, went cold.
Take me to him.
Enkidu walked into Uruk, and the people stopped in the street. Here was a man as big as their king, maybe bigger. That night the wedding drums were beating, the bride was waiting, and Gilgamesh came down the road to claim her the way he always did. Enkidu stepped into the doorway, and he put his foot in the king's path.
Move!
No.
Two-thirds god met 1 part clay, and they hit each other like 2 bulls. They shattered the doorpost, they cracked the wall, they threw each other through the marketplace while the whole city ran for cover. Gilgamesh had never been matched, not once, not by anyone. And here was a wild man holding him, knee buckling, refusing to go down. At the last, Gilgamesh threw him. It was over, the king had won. And then he started to laugh.
Where have you been? All my life, where have you been?
He reached down, he pulled the wild man to his feet, and he held on. The tyrant who had never needed anyone had just found the one person in the world he could not break. From that day, they were never apart, 2 kings of one heart, brothers. For a while, that was enough. The king stopped taking brides. Uruk could breathe again. But Gilgamesh was still two-thirds god. And gods do not sit still. He wanted his name carved into the world so deep that death could never sand it away.
There is a forest in the east, cedars taller than towers. A monster guards it, Humbaba, whose breath is fire. If we kill him, Enkidu, men will say our names for 1,000 years.
Enkidu had lived in the wild. He had smelled that forest. He was the one person who was afraid.
I have heard that thing roar. The ground shakes for miles. Gilgamesh, this is not a fight. It's a grave.
But he went. Of course he went. You don't let your brother walk into a forest alone. Gilgamesh's mother was a goddess. Nin soon. She knew exactly what her son was. She climbed to the temple roof and begged the sun god, Shamash, to keep them alive. "Why did you give my son a heart that cannot rest? Watch over them, Shamash. Bring them home." Then she did something stranger. She called the wild man to her and laid a sacred pendant around his neck. "You had no mother, Enkidu, so I will be yours. Bring my son back to me and come back yourself." And the two of them walked east, toward the cedars, and toward the first mistake the gods would never forgive. The cedar forest was older than cities. The trees went up like green pillars, holding the sky in place. And the thing that guarded it was awake. Humbaba had a face like coiled guts, and a voice that broke a man's courage in half. "I know what you are, little kings. I knew your fathers. I will feed your bodies to the screaming birds." For a moment, even Gilgamesh's nerve cracked. He threw his face to the sky and called the sun. And Shamash answered. He sent the 13 winds. The north wind, the whirlwind, the ice wind. They pinned the monster against his own trees so he could not move. And Humbaba, guardian of the forest, terror of the mountain, began to beg. "Spare me. I'll give you every tree in this forest. I'll be your servant. Gilgamesh, show mercy." Gilgamesh wavered. His axe came down to his side. He almost listened.
Don't. If you let him live, we never walk out of this forest. Finish it.
So they did. They cut the monster down. But a dying god gets one last word, and Humbaba spent his on a curse. "Then may you never grow old together. May one of you bury the other. May the friend die first." They didn't even hear it. They were already cutting down the tallest cedar to make a gate for their city. 2 boys, laughing, standing on top of a god they had just killed. They came home heroes. Gilgamesh washed the forest off his skin, put on clean robes, and set the crown back on his head. And that is when the goddess saw him. Ishtar, queen of heaven, goddess of love and war, the most dangerous beauty in all creation. She looked down at Gilgamesh and she wanted him.
"Be my husband, be my lover. I will give you a chariot of gold and lapis, and kings will lay their harvests at your feet."
Any other man would have died of joy. Gilgamesh laughed in her face.
Marry you? I know your love stories, Ishtar. I know how every one of them ends. Where is Dumuzi, the shepherd you wept for? The one you sent down to the dead? You break every man who loves you. Why would I be any different?
No one, god or man, had ever said no to Ishtar like that. She flew up to her father, Anu, shaking with rage, and she made a threat this family knew too well.
"Give me the bull of heaven. Let me turn it loose on Uruk, or I will break the gates of the dead and let the dead eat the living."
Her own aunt had made that same threat once, in the dark below, so the gods did not call her bluff. They gave her the bull, Gugalana, the bull of heaven. It came down on Uruk snorting, and where its breath touched the ground, the earth split open and swallowed 100 men at a time. But it had come for 2 men who had just killed a god in a forest. Enkidu seized it by the horns. Gilgamesh drove a blade in behind its neck, and the bull of heaven died in the street. And then Enkidu did the one thing they could never take back. He cut the haunch off the dead bull and he hurled it up at the goddess on the wall.
If I could reach you, Ishtar, I'd do the same to you.
That night, the gods sat down in council, and they were not laughing anymore. 2 guardians of heaven were dead. Humbaba of the forest, the bull of the sky, both killed by the same 2 hands. A price will be paid. One of them must die for this. Not someday. Now. Shamash, the sun, stood up for them. He had walked beside them into the forest. "They acted on my word. I sent them to the cedars. Punish me, not the boy. The king is 2/3 god. You cannot kill what is mostly divine. But the other one, the wild man, he is clay. And clay can be unmade." And there it was, the cruelty of it. They would not touch the king. They would take the thing the king loved instead. Enkidu woke the next morning with a fever he could not sweat out.
Gilgamesh, my arms have gone weak. Something is wrong with me.
And across the city, Gilgamesh felt the floor of his whole life begin to tilt. Enkidu did not die fast. The gods are not kind that way. 12 days, he lay on a bed in the palace of Uruk and he burned. At first he was angry. He cursed the hunter who found him. He cursed Shamhat, who had made him a man.
If she had left me in the wild with the animals, I would never have learned what it is to lose. I would never have had to leave him.
Then the sun god spoke to him, soft, from very far away. He reminded Enkidu of everything being human had given him. Bread, beer, a robe, a roof, and a king who loved him more than his own crown. So Enkidu took the curse back. He blessed her instead. Then, near the end, he had a dream. And the dream was worse than the fever.
I have seen where I'm going, Gilgamesh, a house where the dead sit in the dark. They wear feathers, like birds. They eat dust. They drink clay. Kings are servants down there. Crowns count for nothing. And it is so quiet.
Gilgamesh sat by the bed and held his hand and lied to him the way you lie to someone you love.
You're not going anywhere. I'll fight them for you. I'm a god. I'll go down there myself and drag you back.
But he was not enough of a god, not for this. On the last day, Enkidu went quiet. He reached for his friend's hand one more time. And the wild man who had been made of clay went back to it. The strongest king who ever lived put his ear to his friend's chest and listened and heard nothing. What happened next, the people of Uruk would talk about for the rest of their lives. The king did not weep like a king, he wept like an animal. He tore his fine clothes, he ripped out his hair, he paced the body like a lioness whose cubs have been taken. He would not let them bury Enkidu, not the first day, not the 6th, not the 7th. He kept thinking, if I just sit here, if I just wait, he'll wake up. He covered his friend's face the way you cover a bride. He laid out a feast beside a body that would never eat. And then, on the 7th day, he saw it. A worm, falling from the nose of the man he loved. And the 2/3 god finally understood the 1/3 that was human. This is what death is. This is what waits, not just for claymen, for him too. He had built walls to outlast time. He had killed a forest god and a bull from the sky to be remembered forever. And none of it could keep one man breathing. The strongest king who ever lived was brought to his knees, not by a monster, not by a god, by love and by losing it. Here is the part the legends don't soften. Gilgamesh never really recovered. The fear got down into his bones. If Enkidu could die, then so could he, and he could not live with that. So the king walked out of Uruk alone in animal skins, chasing the one thing not even 2/3 of a god is allowed to have. A way to never die. That story is coming. Because before the king went looking for forever, one man had already found it. The only man who ever survived the end of the world. That's next on Forgotten Pantheon. Until then, tell me honestly, have you ever loved someone the world could never replace? Tell me below, subscribe, so the gods don't forget you.